Okay. Okay, time in. Okay, clouds going too. All right, so for the recording, welcome back. We are ACI course for class 3. This is March 24, 2024. And let's gather our minds here as we usually do. Please bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. Now bring to mind that being who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom. And see them there with you. They are gazing at you with their unconditional love for you. Smiling at you with their holy great compassion. Their wisdom radiating from them. That beautiful golden glow encompassing you in its light. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. About how much you would like to be able to help them. And recognize how the ways we try, the worldly ways we try, fall short. How wonderful it will be when we can also help them in some deep and ultimate way, a way through which they will go on to stop their distress forever. We're learning that that is possible, that will be possible. And so I invite you to grow that wish into a longing. And that longing into an intention. And with that intention, turn your mind back to that precious holy being. We know that they know what we need to know, what we need to learn yet, what we need to do yet, to become one who can help this other in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please teach us that. And they're so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of the perfect world they are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands, and we offer it to them, following it with our promise to practice what they teach us using our refuge prayer. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with the blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may all beings reach their total awakening for the benefit of every single other. All right, then. So we learned the names of 3 levels of reality, and we learned examples of each, right? And somebody can share with me one of those 3 levels of reality and the example. Natty.
The evidence-based reality, the one that we see with our eyes.
Right. So is the obvious reality the tree that we see with our eyes?
It's the tree that we see with our eyes.
So our eyeball sees trees.
Our eyeballs, we see through our seeds that we've planted before.
Right. Our eyeball, obvious reality, visual obvious reality is actually colors and shapes, to be more precise, right? So yes. Evident reality is the reality we perceive with our senses. But if we really technically go down deep, we perceive colors and shapes, and we do something to come up with tree, car, friend, right? So colors and shapes for obvious reality, evident reality. Ningir. Shayla, give me a second one, please.
Wait. I'm watching the Spanish channel, so I changed to English channel.
Okay.
The Tibetan name is Kokir.
Okay.
and is the things that we don't perceive directly, like
Okay.
emptiness. An
The
example
hidden-
is emptiness.
Okay,
Emptiness.
good.
The
Hidden reality, good. Our eyeballs cannot see it.
we cannot see it with our sense. We
Right,
have to use logic
right. Good,
to see it.
nice.
Mhm.
And Joanna, what's the third level?
The third level is the deeply hidden reality. So everything that we cannot perceive until we are omniscient. So the workways
Right.
of karma would be an example.
Yeah, good. Subtle workings of karma. And then there are two basic types of perceptions that we use to perceive these different realities. We use two kinds of perceptions to perceive those three realities. Well, the two of the three that we can get to anyway. And I stalled myself in my question. What are those? What are those two kinds of valid perception? Ale, you know.
Sorry. Can you repeat the question? I was
Yeah, what are
distracted.
the two basic types of valid perception and what levels of reality are they used to perceive?
The valid perception and deceptive perception? That's the two.
And what realities do they, which reality does which of those do we use to perceive which of those?
Let me open my homework. Sorry. And I think I don't have it open. Yes. The valid perception is what we use to perceive evident objects.
Okay, so obvious
Uh,
reality is perceived by direct perception. Technically, direct valid perception. We'll talk about it more. And then what's the other one?
The deductive valid perception is that the hidden one that is hidden and super hidden.
Exactly. Deductive reasoning perception. Good. Then we learned about Master Dignaga's opening statement to the Compendium on Valid Perception. And in it, he's bowing down to the being who taught the subject matter that he wants to write about or that he wants to compile in his compendium. And he doesn't just come out and say, I bow down to the Buddha who taught us logic. He gives these 5 qualities of what it is to be Buddha, to establish for us that it's not just about learning logic. It's like there's a reason we learn logic, and it has to do with these other 4 qualities. So those 5 qualities that Master Didaga was bowing down to, one of them is that the Buddha has jet black hair, right? No, there's some other quality that Master Dignaga is bowing down to. Olga says yes first, so Olga, you get to tell us. What's just one of those 5 qualities?
Gone to bliss.
Gone to bliss. That must be Olga's favorite. Then his second good quality is that he can stay up all night and not be tired, right? No, probably he can, but that's not what we're bowing down to. There's some other good quality. Yes, who hasn't had a question yet? Monica, you want to give us one of those 5 qualities? Who can help Monica? Coach Monica into one of those 5 qualities because she knows them. She just doesn't know she knows them.
The second one is the wish to benefit living beings, all living
Right.
beings.
Buddha certainly has bodhicitta, right? Nice. What else? Anybody? Help me out.
He's
The
We
one
have
who
gone to this. Go
valid
ahead.
perception.
A person, a being of valid perception. What are we missing?
The teacher with capital letter.
Right,
T?
the teacher. The teacher. Did we get all of them?
the
I
protector.
bow down to. Oh, there's one more.
The protector.
The protector. I bow down to our protector, the one gone to bliss, the teacher, the one who wishes to benefit all beings, the one who has become valid perception. That's Nettie.
Why is the protector important here for the valid perception when we are talking about?
We'll get to it later.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. So tonight's class is coming from Master Dharmakirti's commentary on Master Dignaga's compendium, remember? So the compendium is everything Buddha said about logic and perception theory, cut and pasted from sutras. And then the commentary on that text comes along to us a couple hundred years later by Master Dharmakirti, and he uses his commentary to help us understand the ramification of all that Buddha taught about reasoning. And in the second chapter of Master Dharmakirti's commentary, he gives us a definition of valid perception, of sema or pramana. He gives us an actual definition. So I will go to our vocabulary. Bigger, bigger, come on, bigger, 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 bigger. Good. Okay, we have all of us. And he gives us the definition of valid perception as a fresh, unmistaken state of mind. A fresh, unmistaken state of mind. Now, this sounds a little bit, I don't know, it just sounds weird to me, because before we were saying a valid perception is a perception that I'm having that's me not with a mind that's affected, but we were talking about the perception that I'm having. I mean, that's how I always hear it. But here it's pointing out that valid perception that we're having is actually it's a state of mind that we're having, which suddenly, like, I don't know, makes things get a little bit weird all of a sudden. Don't let it, have you drop off the bridge. This adorable little quail just walked past. He and his girlfriend. Sorry, that's distracting. They're so cute. What reality is that? Anyway, back to the definition of valid perception is a fresh, unmistaken state of mind. The vocabulary is sardu milue rikpa. Sardu milue rikpa. Rikpa means state of mind. Sardu means fresh. The word is fresh, like fresh vegetables, fresh fruit. But what it's meaning here is like newly. And then milue means not mistaken. It is a double negative somehow in there. Not mistaken, or probably better interpreted as unerring. So fresh, unerring state of mind. So to define a valid perception as fresh, unerring state of mind implies that there are states of mind that are not that. And there are, in fact, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 most common, I guess, states of mind, meaning kinds of perceptions that don't qualify as fresh, unerring states of mind, which means whatever we are perceiving, thinking we are perceiving, with a state of mind that's any of these 5, are perceiving that object or circumstance does not establish the circumstance as existing in the way that we're perceiving it. Right? And that's the important piece, is to not hear this saying, well, if I'm perceiving the tree when I'm drunk, that means there's no tree there when I'm drunk, which means when I'm drunk, I should be able to just walk through my yard, right? And I won't smash into a tree. But that's not what this is saying. This is saying when we're drunk and we perceive the tree in my yard, the tree that I'm perceiving, because my mind is affected by the alcohol, is not the tree that I would perceive if I was unaffected, right? We're thinking it's the same tree, but our perception of it when we're affected does not establish it as being real like that, right? It doesn't mean it's not there at all. We're in logic school. Existing things have their own causes and conditions. They are there. But even in highest school, they also don't say to perceive something with an affected state of mind means the thing you're perceiving doesn't exist at all. Right? It's still your perception, your projection happening, and it's one that's consistent with life or not consistent with life. So it's important not to try to apply higher worldview on this level of discussion, because we won't get it right. Let ourselves stay in. Things have their existences, not self-existent because they depend on their causes and conditions, and how I perceive them accurately or validly or not depends on my state of mind. So there are these 5 states of mind that if we're perceiving objects with these states of mind, those objects that we are perceiving don't qualify as valid perceptions, but they are perceptions, right? So we'll see when I get into them. Yes, Tom.
Sorry about my voice. Um, I want to sharpen on what you said with the question about the state of mind. So I feel like I may be wrong, or maybe it's lying, but I feel like Western American figure of speech of state of mind is like mood, vibe, feeling, like where I'm at right now, what's my state of mind.
Yeah.
And that could change. So is the perception continually will change and
Perceptions
will
of people.
become the correct perception from
Maybe,
what
maybe
we're
not.
talking about?
Yeah. Let me go through these 5
Okay.
different, not Milue,
Okay.
Rikpa, and see if that answers your question. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So these 5 are these states of mind that we might have with which we are perceiving something happening that are not fresh, unmistaken states of mind. So whatever they are perceiving happening does not qualify as valid perception, establishing them to exist. So the first one is this state of mind called lokshe, which means diametrically wrong. Diametrically wrong. Geshe says in English, we have a term, you've got that ass backwards. And it's a very, apt expression. It just means you've got it reversed. You're misunderstanding it exactly opposite of what I meant. So in trying to describe a state of mind in which we're perceiving something and we're taking it to be just completely the reverse of what it would be to a fresh, unmistaken state of mind. We could use an example of a farmer out in a field. And you see the farmer out in the field. When in fact, it's a scarecrow. Right? You drive by so quickly, you see the farmer out there, you take it to be the farmer. For you, it was the farmer. But in fact, it was a scarecrow. And you wouldn't even know you were wrong, right? Until you drove back by at the end of the day. And it's like, son of a gun, that farmer hasn't moved in 8 hours. Oh, I guess it wasn't a farmer back then. Right? Technically, it wasn't the farmer when you saw it from this school, from logic school, because we had it ass backwards. Right? A farmer, not a scarecrow. Second one is a state of mind called tetsam, which means doubt. Here, this means the state of mind having this perception is just not sure. And it might lean towards the accurate perception, or it might lean towards the inaccurate perception. But the fact that it can't quite know, can't quite decide, can't quite establish something, that state of mind of doubt makes whatever is being perceived not valid perception. And that kind of makes sense. Scarecrow, farmer, I don't know, right? It's neither one being established. Now, in another sense, if you take it a little bit deeper, they would say to be aware of your doubt farmer, scarecrow, be aware of the doubt is valid perception. It would be valid perception to not know whether it's a farmer or it's a scarecrow. But that doesn't establish scarecrow or farmer there, right? The doubt prevents us from establishing the identity of the thing for us. The third one, Cheche. Cheche means recollection perception. So memory, it's not the word for memory, but it's talking about having a perception of a memory of something is a state of mind of recalling something. So this would require that we have had a fresh, unerring perception of something, and then that something is gone. And now what you're thinking of or what you are perceiving is your recall of that object, right? So here's our friend. We're having a fresh, unerring perception of the pen, but then I take it away and say, think of my pen, right? And you have a memory, a recollection of my little friend, the red and white pen, but that doesn't establish the pen being there, right? We can't write a letter with our memory of my friend the pen, whereas we could with the pen. So a recollection in this school says that the state of mind that's recalling things that we've had a direct perception of before, those are not established as valid perceptions because they're not substantially enough. Right? You can't drink from a milkshake you just remember. Now, highest school says that Cheche's state of mind is a valid perception of a memory, right? It means you're seeing a memory. You're seeing something, you're thinking of something that you have seen before, you're doing it. Then, of course, that's a valid perception of something you're remembering. Versus thinking my valid perception of the thing I'm remembering makes it as valid as the pen that I saw. But we kind of think so, don't we? It's like I show you my red and white pen over and over and over again. And then we end class. And the next class you see it again. If I were to see you in between classes, it might bring up something about my pen, you would think in your mind, well, she's got a red and white pen there somewhere, right? Because we think we know that the pen still exists once it's gone because we have a memory of it. And we haven't learned anything otherwise. If my pen dies and goes to pen heaven, I promise to let you know, so that you won't be still thinking I have one, right? But it's silly. We don't do that. We don't need to do that. So, memory. A memory does not establish something to exist now. Yichu. Yichu is speculation. The word literally means speculation. we could say, presuming we know, or making assumptions about something, this state of mind that is speculating about the object, the person, the circumstance, the experience. Speculation. Speculation, presuming, assuming, it all implies that we're imposing something onto the object or the circumstance that we really don't know for sure. Right? Speculation, I don't really know, but I expect such and such. Assuming, I don't really know, but putting 2 and 2 together, I'm going to assume this is true. Presuming is a little bit different. I'm not sure you even have 2 and 2 together, but you just think you know. And all of those states of mind means that we think we know something about the identity or the function or the state of mind of the object that we don't really know. Which you can see how that means the way that we are perceiving it can't establish it in a valid way because we're putting something onto it. Right? Not meaning we're putting our seed label on. We're not in that school. Right? Meaning we're adding stuff to the identity of the thing that we're not directly perceiving and that we're not using correct, accurate reasoning to come to. Right? That's the state of mind of Yuchu. The 5th one is Nangla Manyepa. It's hard to say. Nangla Manyepa. Nangla Manyepa is trying to describe a circumstance where something could be happening, but you just don't ascertain it. And Geshe gave the great example of a little kid watching cartoons on TV and the mom's hollering, come for dinner, come Tommy, it's time for dinner, come for dinner. And she's getting so frustrated because Tommy's not responding. And she's thinking he's ignoring her and being rude and naughty when he's just so absorbed in the cartoon that he doesn't even hear her. Right? So in this school, she is there, she is talking to him. He's in this Nangla Manyepa state of mind where it's just not part of his reality at that moment. So focused on something else. It means her calling him to dinner is not being perceived with a fresh, unmistaken state of mind. Yeah? So all of these different states of mind tend to happen to us when our sense of awareness is kind of dim, tired, and not highly intentional, sloppy, right? A sloppy frame of mind lets us have these kinds of different states of mind that we really aren't even so much aware of. But when we're having them, the experiences that we are having through them cannot be said to be existing things. Not that they don't happen, but they were not established to be validly. They were not established validly And that means our interaction with them is going to be mistaken as well. Our interaction to them will be mistaken. So whereas in last class, I was saying 99% of our perceptions are valid perceptions because we're so rarely, so sick, so intoxicated, right? So mistaken. But all of a sudden, it's like, I don't know, I'm in a sloppy state of mind almost all day long. And maybe I'm not having 99.9% of my experiences as valid perception. Don't beat yourself up over it, but recognize that developing this high level mindfulness, soon to be ethical mindfulness, is part of how we learn to cultivate a fresh, unmistaken state of mind as we go through our everyday life, so that we can better choose our behaviors to better create our futures. Right? We're learning how the state of mind, the quality of our attention and motivation is going to make a big difference. Right? Hopefully a beneficial big difference, right? When we understand the process well. Okay. So we're wanting to be able to distinguish between things that we are perceiving directly and things that we are assuming about things and others, so that we can better catch ourselves choosing our behaviors from assumptions and stop doing it. Right? That's our habit, is to assume something and react. And we're learning these skills. First have to learn about it, and then we can practice our training. All right. Now, here's an interesting thing. If we are in any of these states of mind that are not fresh, unmistaken states of mind, once we recognize, oh, I just had doubt. I couldn't figure out whether it was a farmer or a scarecrow. And now I realize I just am not getting enough information. I can't know. That state of mind is a valid perception, right? I'm aware that I'm doubting whether it's scarecrow or is not. That's a fresh, unmistaken state of mind. But to be aware of the doubt, you see? So to become aware that I have it as backwards, to become aware I have doubt, to become aware I'm operating in the realm of recollection or a sub-speculation, or just missing it all together. Those are same on. But then we would need to do something with that as well. According to highest school, however, we have valid perceptions that are still incorrect, because a valid and correct perception of something would need to include the coming out of mental seeds appearing nature of the object and the emptiness of the object. And so the first actual valid, correct perception that we'll ever have will be the direct perception of emptiness. the true nature of any existing thing is the true nature of all existing things, including ourselves. And that's will be the first time we've ever had a fresh, unmistaken state of mind that's both valid and correct. Only highest school makes that clear distinction. Before we get there, as long as we're not in these states of mind or intoxicated, etc., our fresh, unmistaken states of mind are establishing things to exist validly. We can tell whether the object running across in front of the car is a squirrel or a leaf. Sometimes we're a little mistaken. Err on the side of protecting life if you can, but not if you're gonna kill your family to save a squirrel, right? Instant decisions based on valid perception. We see it's pretty important to have an alert state of mind that can make those determinations swiftly enough. Okay. So fresh, unmistaken state of mind is the state of mind that has valid perception. But then in last class, we learned that there is this term, seme kebu, that means a person of valid perception. That term was semar something, the one who turned correct. The one who became correct, valid perception. Like, that's his identity all of a sudden. Hello, sir, you know, who are you? What are you? I'm correct, valid perception. It doesn't make sense. It sounds like it's a quality that we will have. And that is true. But the terminology, I think on purpose, is one becomes valid perception. It means you can't not have valid perception. Even as you're perceiving what you think of as yourself, it's going to be valid perception. But now it's not just valid like we've been talking about, valid but not necessarily correct existentially. Now, this person who's seme kebu, someone who's become valid perception, is a being who's perceiving things with a fresh, unmistaken state of mind that is truly unerring, in that being is perceiving the empty nature of existing things and the appearing nature of existing things, which are all appearing from the mind of the being experiencing them, and the being experiencing them themselves is an appearing nature. And this mind that has become fresh, unmistaken perception perceives it all the time, but freshly, newly, all the time. That's contradictory. We'll talk about it in course 13. So seme kebu means this being who has valid perception all the time, who is valid perception all the time. And that means that being cannot be mistaken in any way. They can't say anything mistaken. They can't hear anything mistaken. They can hear, they can be aware of me doing, saying, being mistaken. But they're not mistaken about that, right? They're directly perceiving my mistake. That's not their mistake. So a being who cannot perceive anything wrongly, unerringly, everything that's going to come out of their mouth has to be unerring because they're hearing it too. It's not just that they won't say anything wrongly, it's that they can't. Technically, they don't have the mental imprints to say anything erringly. Those have all been cleaned away. The merit that makes us omniscient is what, that's redundant. The merit that makes us omniscient is what makes us omniscient. It means we can't, right? We don't have the negative seeds to even be able to say something that's mistaken. And yet, in Buddha's teachings, there are 3 contradictory turnings of the wheel. What's up with that? We get a whole course later on about what's up with that. Right? How can someone who's unerring say this thing exists and then say, well, actually it has no nature, and then say, well, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, right? And not one of those be mistaken. But none of them are mistaken. So it's a whole study. Why am I going there? So a being, so another term for an omniscient being is this semekebu, a being of valid perception. Another way of saying omniscient, which is another way of saying a totally enlightened being. But then we'll learn later, we need to be sure to say totally enlightened, because some people say someone who's reached nirvana is an enlightened being, and they certainly are compared to me, but they're not omniscient yet. And if nirvana is your ultimate goal, and you don't aspire to omniscience, then your nirvana is your enlightenment. Right? And the term's not being used in error, it's being used differently. So Mahayana says total enlightenment so that we don't make that mistake. Okay, so Geshe-la stated and then asked, we know that there are 3 kinds of changing thing amongst all existing things: physical objects, mental objects, and those changing things that are not all physical, not all mental, demenduje it's called. Let's call them conceptual objects. So in changing things, physical objects, mental objects, and conceptual objects. Which is valid perception? Valid perception should be in the category of changing things that are mental, shouldn't it? A mental state of mind, right? It's a mental thing. It's a state of mind, a valid perception. But what about the person? Like the person Buddha, the person Sarahni. Is that person a physical thing? Well, technically not, right? Sarahni has a physical body, but this thing is not Sarahni, because if it were, it could stand on the street corner and any bug or any person driving by would go, hi, Sarahni. And they don't. A lot of people do in my community, but not the bugs. And not the UPS drivers, right? So it's not this. Also, Sarahni must be a mental state. And that's not quite right either, but for a different reason. Sarahni has mental states. Sarahni gets jealous. Sarahni gets angry. We say I'm angry, but we don't say I'm anger right now, right? I'm jealousy right now. I have jealousy, right? The I that we're talking about is this thing I call Sarahni. And it's not physical, although it has a physical body, apparently. And it's not mental, although it has mental states. But Sarahni is this changing thing that's conceptual, isn't it? So how can we say that as Master Dignaga states, Buddha is a person who is Sema? Wouldn't you have to say Buddha is a person who has Sema, has valid perception all the time? But apparently in this literature, in this scripture, it's very clear. Buddha is Seme Kebu, a person of valid perception. This person whose mental state is direct, correct perception always. And that would include their identity, right? So Sarahni is my identity. And it would have to also be correct, direct, accurate perception all the time. Maybe that's why Buddha almost never refers to himself as Buddha or Buddha Shakyamuni, or even say I. He generally says something like the one gone to bliss or the conqueror. He like refers to himself in these vague terms as if he's talking about somebody else. And maybe you'd have to do that once you become a being of valid perception, because the I that we usually refer to as I when we say I'm angry, like I think that a Buddha understands themselves way beyond that. So it can't come out that way because it would be inaccurate. Do you see? All right. So what the Seme Kebu is trying to convey to us is that there is this being who is totally correct in all their perceptions all the time. Even their perception of their concept of self is correct and direct. And I don't know, it takes some thinking about it to really come up with the ramifications of what that would be like. In my personal experience over the years of chewing on that stuff, eventually I saw how the 4 bodies of Buddha are derived out of it. And I'm not going to go there now, but it's like we really will gain the tools that we can teach ourselves stuff and then get it confirmed from scripture or from a teacher by learning how to put the pieces together in an accurate and valid way. Right? The benefit of learning clear thinking, reasoning. All right. So what we're trying to describe in this Seme Kebu is that this is a person who has become omniscient, which implies that they didn't start out that way, which means they became that, which means they had to give up stuff and take up stuff to change themselves in that way. And once they reach it, with their omniscience, they now know what each one of us needs to do to achieve the same goal. They can't make us use it or do it or even learn it. But once we wake up enough to ask, then the floodgates open. And again, it's all up to us to use or not use and to keep asking, right? Okay. So this course 4 is about trying to give us the tools to help us show to ourselves that a Buddha must be always correct. Not just choosing to be always correct out of their love, but they have to be always correct. If we can prove that to ourselves, or at least prove that it might be true, that's enough for us to be able to benefit from the teachings that we are given that are attributed to that being. Because it means we have access to material that's been provided by someone who can't err. Now, there's a whole lot of questions. Has it been has it been handed down accurately? Is it really from the Buddha? Those are also questions that we personally get to chew on and come to conclusions about, and we'll have the tools to do that through our study of the ACI. Okay, let's take a break before we go to our next topic. I will stop the share and pause the recording. Go back to share screen. Share screen. Share screen. I'll pick again. So Geshe-la always says in this context, if he doesn't say this, I say this part. If you are like me, I don't have the seeds to take teachings directly from Buddha Shakyamuni. And I have had teachers through my life that at the time I didn't, I took them to be extraordinary but human. And, I listened to what they taught. I tried it on for size. Some I accepted, some I rejected. And then, met Geshe Michael, and it's still, I'm not seeing directly being taught by a Buddha, but I am aware of realizations and trust, right? What he's teaching. And yet technically, until we're perceiving our teachers as Buddhas, we can't just force ourselves to say, oh, they are totally correct beings who can't say anything wrong. I mean, we can force ourselves to believe that, and it will probably get us in trouble. If we have the seeds, great, right? It won't get us in trouble. But if we're trying to force ourselves to have those seeds, right? Anyway. So then from a teacher's side, if they themselves don't perceive themselves as omniscient, then they are going to be really careful to not say to their students anything that hasn't been given to them through their teacher. And you can see the importance of an intact lineage. If each teacher is declaring, I won't teach anything that wasn't given to me by my teacher, all the way back, right, to the first one who taught what Buddha taught, then even though the subsequent teachers may not see themselves as omniscient or be seen by their students as omniscient, we can show ourselves that the power of the accuracy of the lineage. And that means as a teacher, when you're sharing material, we make it very clear. This is what my teacher taught me. This is my own working with it, my own understandings that have come about. You make clear, right, what's lineage and what's personal. You are allowed to share personal experience, personal ahas, but very important to say, this is how I understand it. It helps, it keeps the lineage pure for future students. And I really admire and honor Geshe Michael's wisdom in that regard. He makes these courses so easy to share. And he says, share them, right? Share them with anybody who will sit down and listen. And then we share them based on how they've been given to us. And we use the reading and we use the homework and quiz and any additional information. We're careful to say, you know, this is how I used it. This is how it works for me. And to be willing to say, this is how I used it and this is where I went wrong. Because a lot of times your own personal experience of where we misunderstood and goofed up helps people more than, you know, this is what's supposed to happen. Okay. All right. So this course 4 and Master Dignaga and Dharmakirti's texts are about helping us gain the tools so that we can come to have a human valid perception of these concepts, conceptual things, these things that are beyond our ability to perceive with our sense organs, like nirvana, Buddhahood, the path to those. Technically, we could add the workings of karma, right? Dependent origination, emptiness. In particular, nirvana, omniscience, and the path to them. And that's what this phrase that Master Dharmakirti is going to help us invest, not that phrase, but he lays out his subject matter for his text. And so Tarpa, please say Tarpa Dong, Tamche Kempe, Kempa Dong, Der Drupe Long. Tarpa technically means freedom. Here it's another term for nirvana, reaching nirvana. Nirvana we learned in course 2, didn't we? That state of freedom from mental afflictions and the seeds for them due to having seen emptiness directly and applied ourselves to it. Short version. Okay. Freedom from mental afflictions, freedom from suffering, but for ourself alone. And Tamche Kempa is the term for omniscience, a being who's perceiving appearing reality and ultimate reality simultaneously all 3 times. Tamche Kempa, perceiving all existing things. And then Derdrupe is the path to these 2. Nirvana and omniscience and the path to them. These are 3, I don't know, existing things that we want to establish as existing, don't we? To reach our own freedom from suffering, to reach being a being who can help everybody get free of their suffering, and how to go about doing it. They seem like 3 important things for us to have made true for ourselves in order to carry ourselves through what we'll need to do to reach those states. If we can bring ourselves to know that nirvana and omniscience is possible, and to know that there is a method for creating them, then if we choose to set about using that path, which we don't have to, but if we do, we won't have to reprove it to ourselves again and again. We will have done the work, come to the conclusion, and that will carry us through as the struggles of life come, which they will for a long time yet. When we have this internal determination that this path will work, then doesn't matter how much yak poop hits the fan, we will stay with the program. If we have doubt about the path, doubt or misunderstanding of the goal, then it's very likely that we'll have challenges, and those challenges will meet one that we just can't, we lose our power, our motivation. Whereas with this succinct, clear, I know it to be true for oneself, we have a tool that will keep us on the path. Now, it doesn't mean we won't have to go back and revisit the logic from time to time. We might need to, but do it once powerfully. Take something that was something we wondered about or doubted, or were understanding with one of these 5 unclear states of mind, and turn it into something that we have perceived with a valid perception born of reasoning, and you have a truth for yourself. It doesn't mean you can then go to everybody in your life and say, this is true for me, so it's true for you, so you have to act this way too, right? Don't do that. Change yourself first. And then pretty soon they'll be saying, yeah, wait a minute, what do you know? How'd you do that? Right? And they'll be asking you to help them. All right, so Geshe said, just to have a valid perception that these 3 could exist is a major step forward. Nirvana, omniscience, and the path to them. To have a valid, to come to a conclusion that, gosh, maybe so. That's enough to start us on our path. It's not enough to keep us on our path, but it's enough to start. And you're all there, or you wouldn't be studying this course, right? Especially after having already done 10 to 18 or whatever you've done. All right, so we want to develop sema, valid perceptions of at least the possibility of nirvana, omniscience, and a path that will get us to them. So now, how are we going to do that? Can we see them directly? Yeah, not until you're there, right? Once you're nirvana-sized, you will be perceiving your nirvana directly. But until we're nirvana-sized, it's not direct. Does that mean it can't exist for us until it's direct? No, it can exist, right? In the sense of I can achieve it. Does already exist for a Buddha, but that's another story. So a direct perception is a perception that does not depend on reasoning, and a deductive perception is a perception that depends upon good reasoning, accurate reasoning, correct reasoning. Until we are Buddhas, once we are omniscient, there is only direct, accurate perception. No more reasoning needed. So if you don't like reasoning, get yourself to your Buddhahood and you never have to do it again. But until we get there, we want to learn how to do it well. And it isn't all just word thinking. It will be a feeling thing as well. But we're learning that we already rely on reasoning. We want to become aware of ourselves doing it and learn how to do it accurately. And that's what this course and course 13 is helping us to do. So what level of reality are these three? Nirvana, omniscience, and the path to them. You have to say according to whom, right? I'll give you a clue. Anytime Geshe Michael asks a rhetorical question like that, you won't go wrong if you say according to whom. Because it's almost always true. According to whom? Their hidden reality for me, I don't know about you. Their obvious reality for a Buddha. Nirvana is obvious reality for Arhat, but omniscience is still hidden. Do you remember the yellow? And whether yellow is obvious reality or not depends on who's looking. So here as well, for me, they are hidden realities still. So for me, I need to use deductive reasoning to be able to perceive them. So there are three kinds of deductive reasoning. I don't have Tibetan for those now, so I'm going to get rid of my screen share so I can see you better. There are three kinds of deductive reasoning that we will learn. One is logical reasoning. And we use logical reasoning to perceive hidden things. Meaning they're not so deep that we can't logic them out, like the empty nature of something or the empty nature of ourself. The second kind of deductive reasoning is called belief in authority. That seems weird, doesn't it? Like belief in authority is a deductive reasoning. In order to have belief in authority, we have to have at some point made some determination that that person who is for us the authority we have to have established them as that. And, you know, as kids, the belief in authority is mom and dad. And it's not like we use reasoning to come to it. It was just, that's what happens, right? As you grow your own identity, mom and dad already have them, and then it's all up to them. And what do we do as we grow up, especially as we get, like it starts when we're 2, no. And then by the time we're, what, 12, 13, 14 for sure, it's like, no, no. And our, like we never did go through the reasoning to establish mom and dad as authority figures. And so they become it, not it for us. Right. And that, you know, that's growing up. But as we grow up and mom and dad are no longer so much the authority figure, we are choosing other authority figures. And I don't know, for humans, it's the law is an authority figure, right? And we go by the law because we've established some authority in the sense that something will go wrong for me if I don't do that. So somewhere along the way, we did agree that the law is an authority figure. Thank you for agreeing to that, right? Or it would be chaos. But we didn't really have the opportunity to say, do I want to or do I not? We had to as humans. And then we are in some subtle way choosing to continue to go along with that and choosing when not to continue to go along with that. Like every time we, I don't know, park our car, right, in a wrong parking space, and we justify it, I'm only going to be there a minute, right? And it's like we're willing to break the law because it's so minor a thing. But see, we've made that determination to not follow some authority. So now when we're speaking about hidden and deeply hidden reality, we can logic out hidden reality, but deeply hidden reality is, like, by its not self-existent nature, too deeply hidden to even logic out. And yet here we have these teachings that says there are subtle workings of karma and somebody knows them. And if we were to know them, it would be even not the subtle workings. We would be able to stop perpetuating suffering. And so it would be helpful if I could know those too, but I can't even reason them out from a human state of mind. So that means I want to believe in the authority figure who teaches about that with enough conviction that when I hear them teach me about something I can't even confirm logically, that I will not doubt it. Not meaning Buddhism says, once you prove Buddha's true, then you take everything as true. And the way we know not to do that is because we've got those 3 turnings that seem contradictory, right? And we're going to learn the teaching where Buddha says, don't do it just because I said so. And yet, we're wanting to prove to ourselves that they're an omniscient being who knows exactly what we need to give up and take up. Right? So we're not giving up our responsibility for making our own choices of behavior. As we're studying and proving to ourselves, Buddha is omniscient, I can get there too. In fact, we're learning that we're more, our personal responsibility will get stronger. So based on authority, to have that personal conviction towards an authority, we have to apply ourselves in our reasoning to the teachings of this being in order to prove to ourselves that for me, they cannot tell me wrongly. They cannot lie. They cannot teach something mistaken. And that is it's a personal belief and authority that we can come to. If we're studying this material, we have mental seeds from past lives to believe this stuff. But those are mental seeds from past lives. How many more do you have in your pocket? We don't know. Right? So we can rely upon our faith. And maybe it will carry us through, maybe it won't. We can take the power of these seeds that we already have and reinforce them by learning the method of working out the details of why a Buddha's teachings must be correct, and then use them for our own personal guidance through our behavior choice training. So belief in authority, that we've established the being as an authority, not just faith in authority, established belief. Then the third one is called based on convention. To have a deductive reasoning based on convention means our perception is based on an agreement between a whole bunch of people. Convention. So common conventions in the United States is when somebody says, oh, Uncle Sam did that for me. Everybody in the United States somehow knows we're talking about the US government. Uncle Sam is the US government. Another example is when we say, oh, the man in the moon. We all seem to know that we're talking about the full moon, right? Tibetans say the rabbit in the moon, not the man in the moon. But then all Tibetans would know you were talking about the full moon when you talk about the rabbit in the sky. So we have all kinds of perceptions by convention. And the problem with perceptions by convention is that they're not helpful. So what if everybody knows that Uncle Sam is the US government? It doesn't help us choose our behavior any differently necessarily. Perceptions by convention also can be on the level of what's socially acceptable and what's not. And those truth by convention can lead us wrong in a lot of ways. So although there are three kinds of deductive reasoning, the logical reasoning is the most important one, because we even need to use that to establish the belief in authority, which is an important one to establish personally towards the Buddha's teachings for us. Right? One would do the same for whatever their spiritual path lineage would be. All right. So then once we're convinced that nirvana, omniscience or Buddhahood and the path to them are existing things, that gives us this change in perspective through which we can make changes in our lives. Geshe has said, you can hear this stuff and like never in this life do anything different. Like you could just drop it and go on. But seeds have been planted, right? And they're gonna do their thing, faster, slower, according to what comes next. But the seeds have been planted, and unless we do something intentionally to damage and get rid of them, but they're sown. That's like a rejoiceable. They're growing already. But we can help them along the way. We can speed them along as we use these teachings to choose our behavior changes that we want to make based on our growing understanding from reasoning about how our behavior now and now and now creates the imprint that will become the circumstances of our future. Right? And that's true from any level school. It's there, they all say karma is how we change ourselves in our world. All right. So the purpose of this course 4 is to gain the tools to reach a valid perception, either born of logic or direct, that would be nice, of the existence of nirvana, omniscience, and the path to them. Right? Course 4 out of 18, we gain the tools to prove that nirvana is possible. Your nirvana is possible. Your omniscience is possible. And what your path to them is going to need to look like. But then it's up to you to do it, to map that out. Okay? All right, let me look at my quiz for next week, make sure I said everything I was supposed to. I did. So again, we're done early. And the reason these classes are short is that when Geshe was teaching them originally in New York, I think I've said this before, his students were like co-students of Ken Rinpoche. And so they'd studied, most of them had studied this stuff before, and they didn't see Geshe Michael as any further along the path as they were. And so they were arguing with him about points from the class before. And he was going through it again and again and again. If you've ever listened to the audios of those courses, early courses, the first half is him talking to the students, trying to clarify what he had said before, because they're arguing with him, you know, and it's so frustrating. And the dogs are barking and the horns are blaring, and it's, you know, they're pretty rough. But it takes up most of the class. And then he gets to the class material, right? And so I'm not going to rush us any faster because the homeworks are based on what he said in class, right? He didn't have the homework and then did class. He did the homeworks based on class. So I don't want to put 2 homeworks, right, into your lap by speeding up through class. So I just get the extra minutes for later, because I'm going to need them. So remember that person we wanted to be able to help at the beginning of class? What we've learned tonight we've already actually put in motion that ability to help them in that deep and ultimate way someday. And that's an extraordinary goodness. So be happy with yourself. Let those seeds get full. And think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone that you can hold in your hands. Recall your own precious holy guide. See how happy they are with you. Feel your gratitude to them, your reliance upon them. Ask them to please, please stay close, to continue to guide you, help you, inspire you, and then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accept it and bless it, and they carry it with them right back into your heart. See them there, feel them there. That love, that compassion, that wisdom. It feels so good, we want to keep it forever. And so we know to share it by the power of the goodness that we've just done. May all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. So use those 3 long exhales to share this goodness with that one person, to share it with everyone you love, to share it with every being in existence everywhere. See them all filled with happiness, filled with wisdom, and may it be so. All right. Thank you, my dears. Stopping recording. There we go.